The folder hit the floor like a gunshot. Pages scattered across the hardware shop's concrete, my business plans bleeding into puddles from the leaking roof. My father Harlan stood over them, chest heaving, fists still clenched from ripping my work in half. "You'll never make it without me." His voice bounced off every wall, every tool rack, every face of the customers who'd frozen mid-transaction. I was 24 years old, and my father had just destroyed me in front of the entire town. My hands shook as I bent to gather the torn pages, but he kicked them aside. "Leave it. You're done here, Ryan." The shop door slammed behind me with such force that the Harlan and Son hardware sign rattled loose. I stood on that porch, rain soaking through my shirt, watching people inside whisper and point. My father's final words chased me into the storm, "You'll crawl back begging. You hear me? Begging." I didn't look back. I couldn't. But standing under that broken streetlight 3 blocks away, water dripping from my hair, I made myself a promise that would change everything. "Then I'll build something so strong," I whispered to no one, "even you will need me." My name is Ryan Castell, and I learned early that loyalty doesn't guarantee love. Growing up in my father's shadow meant understanding one rule: his way was the only way. Harlan had built his hardware business from nothing, and he wore that accomplishment like armor against anyone who dared suggest improvement. I was raised inside those walls, taught to sort screws at 6, operate the register at 10, and handle inventory by 15. My mother died when I was young, leaving just the two of us in that shop. For years, I believed we were building something together. I believed wrong. The shop smelled like motor oil and sawdust, like possibility and hard work. I loved it the way some kids love baseball or music. But my father loved it differently. To him, it wasn't a business. It was a throne. And I was never meant to share it, only inherit it on his terms, in his image. When I started suggesting changes, small things like digital inventory tracking or online ordering, he'd laugh. "This town doesn't need computers, boy. They need me." The first crack appeared 6 months before he threw me out. I'd spent weeks designing a simple website where customers could request repairs or order specialty tools. Nothing fancy, just basic service expansion. I showed it to Harlan during our usual Sunday morning coffee at the shop. He stared at the laptop screen for maybe 10 seconds before closing it. Waste of time. I tried explaining the potential, how farmers 20 miles out could place orders without driving into town. How we could reach customers in neighboring counties. He cut me off. "You think you're smarter than me now? Think your fancy ideas make you special?" His voice carried that edge I'd learned to recognize, the one that meant the conversation was over. But I pushed anyway. "Dad, I'm trying to help us grow." He stood up so fast his chair tipped backward. "Us? There is no us, Ryan. There's my business, and there's you doing what I tell you." That night, I found the website I'd built deleted from the shop's computer. Every file, every backup, gone. He never mentioned it again. The breaking point came because of old Vernon Thatch, a farmer who'd been buying supplies from us for 30 years. Vernon brought in a broken drill press, ancient but salvageable. I spent 3 hours on it, not just fixing the original problem but upgrading the motor mount and rewiring the electrical system. When Vernon came to collect it, he tested it right there in the shop and nearly cried. "Runs better than new. Harlan, your boy's got magic hands." My father was ringing up another customer, but I saw him stiffen. Later, after Vernon left, after the shop emptied for lunch, Harlan cornered me by the tool wall. "Don't ever make me look second-rate in my own shop again." I thought he was joking. "Dad, I was just helping a customer." His hand slammed into the metal shelving. "You were showing off. Making me look old and useless. That stops now." The next morning, I found my workbench cleared out, my tools locked in his office. When I asked why, he handed me a broom. "Focus on what you're actually good at. For 2 months, I swept floors and hauled inventory while my father handled all customer interactions. He'd answer questions I could have solved in seconds, often giving wrong information that cost people time and money. When I tried correcting him privately, he'd assign me to clean the bathroom. The shop's reputation started slipping. Customers left frustrated. Some stopped coming altogether. One evening, after everyone left, I approached him with the folder, the one that would eventually hit the floor. Inside were proper plans this time, printed proposals, cost analyses, customer surveys I'd conducted quietly on my own time. "Dad, please just look at this. We're losing people. I can help." He took the folder, flipped through maybe 3 pages, and his face darkened. "You've been talking to my customers behind my back." I tried explaining, but he wasn't listening. "You're trying to take over. That's what this is. You think you can push me out of my own business?" The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. Almost. "I'm trying to save it." That's when he ripped the folder in half. The shipping container cost me everything I'd saved working at the shop. It sat on the edge of town, rusted and forgotten on a vacant lot I rented for almost nothing from a widow who felt sorry for me. The first night I spent inside, I questioned every decision. The roof leaked in 4 places. The single electrical outlet buzzed whenever I plugged anything in. My work surface was a door balanced on cinder blocks. But it was mine. Nobody could take it from me or lock me out or tell me my ideas were worthless. I bought basic tools secondhand, the bare minimum to start doing repair work. A drill press from an estate sale. A vise with a broken handle. Wire cutters that barely closed. Each piece felt like a small rebellion. That first week, I had 0 customers and plenty of doubt. I'd wake up at dawn in my apartment, drive to the container, and sit there wondering if my father was right. Maybe I was nothing without him. Maybe this was all ego and stupidity. Then I'd remember his face when he destroyed my plans, and I'd get back to work. My first job came by accident. I was outside the container one evening, trying to patch the worst roof leak with scrap metal, when a delivery truck broke down nearby. The driver, a young guy named Koslow, stood staring at his engine like it had personally betrayed him. I walked over with my toolbox. "Need help?" He explained he had 4 more stops and his company would dock his pay if he missed them. I spent 20 minutes identifying the problem, a loose connection in the ignition system, and fixed it with supplies I had. He tried to pay me. I refused. "Just tell people where to find me if they need repairs." Koslow nodded, thanked me maybe 15 times, and drove off. I forgot about it until 3 days later when a woman showed up at my container holding a broken sander. "Koslow's sister. He said you're honest and good. Can you fix this?" Her name was Aria, and she ran a small building supply store across town. The sander took me an hour to repair. When I told her the price, she looked surprised. "That's all. Most places charge triple." I shrugged. I charge for the work, not the desperation. Aria became my first ally. She started sending customers my way, people who needed repairs but couldn't afford the big shops in the county seat. I fixed everything: drills, saws, generators, anything with a motor or circuit board. Word spread slowly, then suddenly. Within a month, I had more work than I could handle alone. My container shop buzzed with activity from sunrise to dark. I never advertised. Didn't need to. People talked. "That Castell kid, Harlan's son, he'll treat you right." Some mentioned it carefully, knowing the story of our split had spread through town like smoke. Others didn't care about the drama, only that I fixed their equipment properly and charged fairly. One customer told me he'd stopped going to Harlan's shop entirely. "Your father tried selling me a new carburetor when all I needed was a cleaning. Cost me $200 for a $10 problem. Won't make that mistake again." I didn't badmouth my father. Didn't need to. My work spoke clearly enough. By month 3, I'd saved enough to buy a used generator, real lighting, and a space heater that actually worked. Meanwhile, Harlan's shop continued as it always had, except now people whispered. I heard stories through customers, through Aria, through the natural gossip network of a small town. My father spent evenings at Crowley's bar, buying rounds and telling anyone who'd listen about his ungrateful son. Built that boy from nothing, taught him everything he knows, and he throws it back in my face. Playing businessman with a shed. People laughed with him, at least to his face. But his customer base was shrinking. Some came to me directly. Others simply stopped needing hardware as often, finding alternatives in neighboring towns. I kept my head down, avoided the bar, avoided anywhere I might run into him. This wasn't about revenge for me. It was about survival. About proving to myself that I was more than his shadow. But every time I heard about him mocking me, calling my business a joke, something hard settled deeper in my chest. Not anger exactly. Something colder. Something patient. The turning point came from the most unexpected place. A farmer named Duckett, 70 years old and stubborn as iron, brought me his tractor's transmission. The whole town knew Duckett never asked for help, never trusted mechanics, barely trusted people. Heard you're honest, he grunted, unloading the massive component. Fix it or don't, but give me a straight answer either way. The transmission was a disaster, decades of neglect and improper repairs. I spent 2 full days on it, rebuilding parts one couldn't source, machining custom pieces. When Duckett returned, I'd test run it for 6 hours straight. He paid me, then did something that changed everything. He pulled out his phone and recorded a short video right there, his weathered hands holding the transmission while he spoke. This young man saved my tractor for free labor, only charged parts. Harlan's boy. Honest work. Spread the word. He posted it to the local community page and forgot about it. I forgot about it too, until my phone started buzzing non-stop that evening. 50 repair requests. Then 100. My container shop exploded with demand overnight. I registered the business officially as Rian Tools. The name felt right, simple and true, carrying my mother's maiden name and my own identity without reference to my father's legacy. With the sudden influx of work, I needed help. I hired 2 teenagers from the high school, Pax and Jolene, both from families struggling financially. I taught them everything the way I wished my father had taught me, with patience, explanation, and respect. We fix things right, or we don't fix them at all, I told them on their first day. And we treat every customer like they matter, because they do. Pax was quiet and meticulous, perfect for detailed circuit work. Jolene had intuition for mechanical problems, seeing solutions others missed. They learned fast, worked hard, and within weeks became essential. Customers started requesting them by name. The container shop that had seemed so empty months ago now hummed with 3 people working, tools clattering, the radio playing softly in the corner. We were a team. A family, almost. Everything I'd wanted to build with my father, I was building here instead, with people who actually believed in what we were doing. Aria visited one afternoon carrying lunch for everyone, a habit she'd started without asking. We sat outside on overturned buckets, eating sandwiches while Pax and Jolene argued about the best way to rewire a shop light. "You're doing well," Aria said quietly. "Really well. People notice." I nodded, watching my 2 employees work. "Feels good. Finally feels like I'm building something that matters." She hesitated, then said something that stuck with me. "Success makes enemies before it makes friends. Be careful, Rian." I understood what she meant. My father's shop was struggling now, no longer the only option in town. Some of his loyal customers had switched to me. Others simply stopped shopping there out of principle, tired of his attitude. "I'm not trying to hurt him," I said. Aria gave me a knowing look. "Doesn't matter what you're trying. What matters is what happens. That conversation echoed in my head for days. I'd built Rian tools to prove something to myself, not to destroy my father. But the two were becoming inseparable, whether I wanted them to or not. My success was his failure. My growth was his decline. The scales had tipped, and they kept tipping. The collapse of Harlan and Son Hardware happened slowly, then all at once. First, his main supplier cut him off for unpaid invoices. Then the bank called his outstanding equipment loans. His two remaining employees quit within the same week, both finding work elsewhere. I heard all of this secondhand, pieced together from customer gossip and Arya's careful updates. Part of me expected to feel satisfaction. Instead, I felt hollow. This was the man who raised me, taught me to use my first tools, who once carried me on his shoulders through this same town. The fact that he'd destroyed our relationship didn't erase the years before. One evening, Koslow mentioned seeing my father at the bank, arguing with a loan officer in the parking lot. Looked rough, man. Really rough. I focused on my work, on growing Rian tools, on anything but the image of Harlan falling apart. But at night, lying awake in my apartment, I couldn't stop wondering, when he finally hit bottom, where would he land? And what would that mean for both of us? A city investor named Quinlan found me through my growing reputation. He showed up one morning in an expensive suit, completely out of place among the work boots and grease stains of my shop. I represent a firm interested in scaling skilled craftsmen. Your name came up. We talked for an hour. He offered expansion capital, facility upgrades, regional marketing, the works. Everything I'd need to turn Rian tools from a local repair shop into something bigger. What's the catch? I asked. He smiled. No catch. We invest, you grow, everyone profits. But expansion means hiring from outside the area, optimizing costs, normal business decisions. I thought about Pax and Jolene, about the customers who trusted me because I was one of them. I'll consider it. But any expansion happens without cutting local jobs. That's non-negotiable. Quinlan's smile faded slightly. That's not optimal for margins. I stood up, extending my hand to end the meeting. Then we'll find a different way, or we won't expand at all. Thanks for coming. He left looking puzzled, like he'd never met someone who prioritized people over profit. But that night, I felt good about the decision. My father had built his empire on control and ego. I'd build mine on something different. The county trade fair happened every fall, a massive event where regional businesses showcased products and services. I'd attended as a kid with my father, watching him work the crowd, shaking hands, playing the successful businessman. This year, I rented a booth for Rian tools. Pax, Jolene, and I spent days preparing our display, repaired equipment showing before and after, customer testimonials, live demonstrations of our work. The morning of the fair, setting up our booth, I noticed a familiar sign across the exhibition hall. Harlan and Son Hardware. But the booth was nearly empty, just a crooked banner and a few dusty display items. My father stood there alone, no customers, no interest. Our eyes met across that crowded space, hundreds of people between us but the distance feeling infinite. He looked older, smaller somehow. His shirt was wrinkled, his usual confidence gone. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he turned away first, busying himself with rearranging items nobody was looking at. I felt something crack inside my chest, not quite sympathy but not quite satisfaction either. Just a deep, aching sadness for what we'd both lost. The fair lasted 3 days. His booth closed early on day 2. Mine stayed packed until closing. 2 months after the trade fair, Harlan and Son Hardware shut its doors permanently. The bank foreclosed on the building. His remaining inventory was auctioned off for pennies on the dollar. The sign that had hung over Main Street for 30 years came down on a Tuesday morning. I wasn't there to watch, but half the town was. People sent me messages, asking if I'd seen it, if I knew what my father would do now. I didn't respond. Didn't know what to say. That evening, driving past the empty shop, I felt a strange grief. This was the place that had shaped me, for better and worse. Where I'd learned to work with my hands, to value craftsmanship, to understand the dignity of fixing broken things. My father had ruined our relationship, but he'd given me those skills. The building stood dark and hollow, windows already gathering dust. Someone had spray-painted something crude on the back wall. I made a mental note to paint over it later, even though the building wasn't mine. Some things you do because they're right, not because they benefit you. I drove away feeling like I'd won a war I never wanted to fight. 3 weeks later, my assistant Maris walked into my office holding a single sheet of paper. Her face told me it was important before she said a word. This came in with today's applications. She placed it on my desk and left without elaborating. I picked it up. A resume. Standard format, professional layout, nothing unusual until I reached the name at the top, Harlan Castell. My father's handwriting in the signature field. Position applied for, floor technician. Under previous experience, former owner, Harlan & Son Hardware. Under additional notes, willing to learn. I read it 3 times, certain I was misunderstanding. My father, applying to work for me. The man who'd thrown me out, mocked me, predicted my failure, now asking for a job in the company I'd built from nothing. My hands shook holding that paper. Anger, sadness, confusion, something resembling vindication, all hitting at once. Maris knocked and re-entered. What do you want me to tell him? I stared at my father's signature, messy and desperate. The decision felt impossible, too heavy for one person to carry. Then I remembered standing in the rain, torn papers scattered around my feet, my father's voice echoing, "You'll crawl back begging." I didn't answer immediately. That resume sat on my desk for 5 days while I worked, ate, slept, and tried to figure out what the hell to do. Arya advised compassion. He's your father, Rian. Whatever happened, that doesn't change. Pax and Jolene said nothing, wisely staying out of family business. Quinlan, who I'd stayed in touch with, offered a different perspective during a phone call. Business is business. If he can do the work, hire him. If not, don't. But this wasn't just business. This was 30 years of complicated history compressed into a single decision. On the 5th day, I sat alone in my office after everyone left. I thought about the man who'd raised me, taught me to respect tools, to value honest work. Then I thought about the man who destroyed my plans, locked me out, mocked my dreams. Both were my father. Both were real. Finally, I wrote a simple email response. Report to Rian Tools, Monday, 8 a.m. Uniform required. Bring work gloves. I hit send before I could change my mind. My father wrote back within an hour. Just 2 words, thank you. I closed my laptop and sat in the dark, wondering if I'd just made the best or worst decision of my life. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. I got to the shop early, before anyone else, needing time to prepare myself. At 7:45, a familiar truck pulled into the parking lot. My father climbed out slowly, wearing clean work clothes I'd never seen before. He carried a lunchbox, the same dented metal one he'd used my entire childhood. When he entered, the shop fell silent. Pax and Jolene stopped working. Maris paused mid-phone call. Everyone knew who he was, knew the history. I walked over, keeping my expression neutral. Mr. Castell. You're early. The formality felt necessary, creating distance we both needed. He nodded, looking around at the facility I'd built, the modern equipment, the organized workspace. Everything his old shop hadn't been. Where do you want me? I handed him a clipboard. Maintenance rotation. You'll organize tools, clean workstations, assist technicians as needed. Pax will show you the systems. My father glanced at Pax, a kid he'd once seen as beneath notice, now his supervisor. Something passed across his face, shame maybe, or acceptance. Understood. He clocked in like everyone else. No special treatment. No acknowledgement of our shared past. Just another employee starting a new job. The first weeks were brutal, not because of the work but because of the silence. My father and I barely spoke beyond necessary job communication. He followed instructions, kept his head down, did what he was told without complaint. The man who'd ruled his shop like a dictator now took orders from people half his age. I watched him struggle with it, saw the pride crack and crumble. Several times I almost pulled him aside, almost tried talking about everything that had happened. But I couldn't find the words, didn't know where to start. How do you heal a wound that deep? Meanwhile, Rian Tools kept growing. We moved into a larger facility, hired 6 more people, expanded services into 3 counties. My father witnessed all of it from the ground floor, literally, sweeping and organizing while the business he predicted would fail thrived around him. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me lead team meetings or handle difficult customers, an expression on his face I couldn't quite read. Not quite regret, not quite pride. Something in between. One evening, he stayed late finishing a tool organization project. I was in my office, door open, reviewing contracts. He passed by, hesitated, then kept walking. Neither of us was ready. Not yet. The conversation finally happened 4 months after his hire, on a night when everyone else had left. I was in the workshop repairing an old drill press, the exact model my father and I had worked on together when I was 12. It was purely sentimental work, a customer project I could have delegated but chose to handle myself. My father appeared in the doorway, cleaning rag in hand. That's a Belmont 340. Haven't seen one in years. I looked up, surprised. Customer restoration. More nostalgia than function. He moved closer, examining the machine. We fixed one just like this. You couldn't have been more than 10 or 11. 12, I corrected quietly. Vernon Thatch's first drill press, before he upgraded. My father nodded, memory playing across his features. Then, so softly I almost missed it, I was wrong. I stopped working, setting down my tools. He continued, voice rough. Not just about the business. About you. About everything. His hand rested on the drill press, trembling slightly. I didn't fear your failure, Rian. I feared your success. Feared you'd become everything I couldn't. The workshop felt too small suddenly, too quiet. I feared you'd do it without me, he finished. And you did. You did it better. I'd imagined this moment 1,000 times during the years of hurt and struggle. In those fantasies, I was cold, dismissive, making him feel the way he'd made me feel. But standing there, watching my father's shoulders shake with silent tears, all I felt was tired. Tired of anger, of resentment, of carrying this weight. You taught me to fix broken things, I said finally. To take something damaged and make it work again. But you wouldn't let me fix us. He looked at me then, really looked, maybe for the first time in years. Can we? Can it be fixed? I thought about the torn business plans, the public humiliation, the years of mocking and doubt. Then I thought about the resume, the humble return, the 4 months of quiet work without complaint. Some breaks are too severe to fully repair. But broken things can still be useful, still serve their purpose. I don't know, I admitted. But we can try. I extended my hand, not quite forgiveness but not quite rejection either. Something in between, a starting point. My father took it, his grip familiar and strange all at once. We shook once, firm and honest, the way he'd taught me decades ago. Outside, the night settled around Rian Tools, around the business I'd built from humiliation and determination. Around this moment of fragile peace. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Trust, once shattered, rebuild slowly if it rebuilds at all. But over the following year, something shifted between my father and me. I promoted him from maintenance to workshop trainer, a position teaching new apprentices the fundamentals of tool repair. He was good at it, patient in ways he'd never been with me, maybe because he understood now what he'd missed before. I watched him work with the younger employees, showing them proper technique, explaining why precision mattered. Listen to your tools, he'd tell them, the same advice he'd once mocked me for giving. They'll tell you what they need. We started having coffee together on Sunday mornings again, not at the shop but at a neutral diner across town. We didn't talk about the past much, focusing instead on present problems, future plans, safer ground. Slowly, carefully, we rebuilt something. Not what we'd had before, that was gone forever. But something new, something earned through struggle rather than assumed through blood. One morning, he asked me about expansion plans. I showed him Quinlan's revised offer, now structured to preserve local jobs while scaling regionally. What do you think? I asked. He studied the numbers, then looked up. I think you'll make the right choice. You always do. 3 years after the day my father ripped up my business plans, Rian Tools celebrated its regional expansion at a ceremony attended by hundreds. Employees, customers, town officials, even Quinlan flew in from the city. The new facility was massive compared to my original shipping container, with dedicated departments, modern equipment, and a training center for apprenticeships. I stood at a podium looking out at faces I knew, faces I'd helped, faces that had helped me. My father sat in the back row, not hiding but not seeking attention either. When I reached the part of my speech about foundations and growth, I paused. This company started because someone told me I'd fail without them. They were wrong, but not completely. I did need people. Just not the ones I expected. I looked directly at my father. Every broken thing can be rebuilt. Sometimes even a father and son. It takes time, humility, and a willingness to start over. But it's possible. The applause felt distant, muted by emotion. After the ceremony, my father approached, shaking my hand formally. Proud of you, son. Just that. Simple and true. We didn't hug, didn't have some dramatic reconciliation. We were broken pieces held together by careful work, and that was enough. Better than I'd hoped for years ago, standing in the rain, humiliated and alone. 6 months after the ceremony, I stood in front of an empty lot on Main Street. The old Harlan and Son hardware building had been demolished, leaving bare ground where my childhood had played out. I'd bought the property quietly, through an LLC that didn't carry my name, and spent weeks deciding what to do with it. The answer came clearly once I stopped forcing it. Construction crews broke ground on a new building, modern but respectful of the town's character. The sign went up 3 months later, Rian Tools Training Center. A place where anyone, regardless of background or money, could learn repair skills, craftsmanship, honest work. My father and I stood together at the opening, watching teenagers file in for the first session. Some from families struggling like mine had, some just curious, all eager to learn. This is good, my father said quietly. Really good. I nodded, thinking about the path that led here. The humiliation, the struggle, the slow rebuilding of both a business and a relationship. Pride had nearly destroyed everything. Humility had rebuilt it. Pride breaks families, I said, more to myself than him. But kindness builds kingdoms. My father glanced at me, understanding in his eyes. We stood there watching the future walk through doors built on the ruins of the past, proof that the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming something better than what broke you.